And now the last keynote, the one keynote of the day, which is just following up what we discussed with Carina. How can the green transition be democratic? It has to be, but is it really? Please give a warm hand for Kristian Borch, who's from the Aalborg University and from the Nordic Ruralis.
Good morning. So we hear from the stage that the municipalities want to be green, the industry wants to be green. Well, that's all good. What about the citizens? That's my interest. I'll look at municipalities both in Norway and Denmark. I'm also trying to build my network into Sweden and Finland and hopefully beyond that. But this is very complicated, so I have to dive into things. Yesterday we also heard about that Nordics are not green. So yes, we have to turn green. We also have to hurry. And what is the consequences when we hurry without talking to the citizens? So this slide here is really saying something about the attitude from the citizens. And what you see behind me is a curve on acceptance. So when you ask citizens whether there's something wrong with the climate, we need to do something, they say, yeah, absolutely. Is it also okay that you have to live with changes, that the energy landscape changes around you? And they say, yes, absolutely, that's okay. Of course, in Denmark, people talk about wind turbines because it's a good industrial history. That's point number one. That's how. So the industry must be on this trip as well. So why is this smiley here? Actually not a smiley, it's an unhappy smiley. Because when we start talking about planning, we don't talk to the citizens. And if we believe that the citizens are negative, it's because we ask them at the bottom of this curve, not at the beginning. So what's going wrong here is what interests me. And it is something about the planning. And it depends where you are. In Norway, it's extremely centralized, so it's all decided in Oslo. And that's not necessarily having a good sense of what's going on in the districts. I know Finland is also quite centralized, maybe Sweden's in between. Denmark is very decentralized. That's not that we don't see the same problems as these, but it's also about competences. And this is not new. We've been studying this for many, many years. So this is a colleague of mine from Holland, Professor in Holland. He's retired now, but he's still very active. So this is all about that. We've known this for many, many years, that the NIMBY theory is false. There's no evidence for it. So don't believe that the citizens from the starting point are against this. They are not. They're against if they're not involved. And this is what I want to show you here. So this is one of the theories we're working on. So we divide we divide this acceptance into three. So the policy acceptance, about what we just heard. Yeah, we want to do this. The planners that we have hired in the municipalities, yeah, they know what this is about, so they also accept it, and this is the way to go. The market, yeah, the market also accepts this, as we just heard. We need to go green, and we can buy green energy from the grid. There are investors that invest it, so the market is also okay. So what about a community acceptance? So that's the citizens, right? What they are interested in is procedural justice. So do we have a say? Are we involved in this? Do we get something out of it? And there's one missing here, and that is the recognitional justice. And that's all about, for example, the proxy for that, if it doesn't work, is when the Sami people get angry. And at the end of the day, we can't do this without trust. Democracy builds on trust. So what is it that is happening when we see this sour smile I just showed you before? it seems to be a decoupling. There's a lot of stuff going on this slide. So what I want to concentrate on here is, well, if you have the political acceptance and we have the market acceptance, it seems to be a decoupling going on. So we get a lack of community acceptance. Why is that? That is because the procedures that we're using are injustice. They're perceived as injustice, and they probably are. So the more centralized you take these decisions, the worse it gets, because you simply don't know what's going on in where things are happening. And this is where the municipalities comes in. It's their responsibility to take the interests of their citizens. And they have to take a lot of interest into consideration. The planning, what municipalities have to do the right planning is enormous. They have completely different interests. They have to take into consideration many, many more things than the state has. The state is interested in, infrastructure, and they're interested in producing green energy to the whole country. So are the municipalities, but they also have to take into consideration many, many more things. So therefore, municipalities, in my view, is really the key here. And the key is to be able to talk to the right people at the right time. So if you don't do that, you get a sense of procedural injustice. You get a sense of distributional injustice. What do I get out of it? In Denmark, we have compensation. It's only economic, unfortunately, and that doesn't count. I'll come back to that. And then, of course, recognitional injustice. Who am I? What is my culture? Do you take that into consideration of your decisions? And at the end of the day, we end up with lack in trust, both in authorities and in the private business. And that's not good. So we get this at the bottom here, we get this red person. It can be very, very few people that stops the whole process. And that is really what democracy is all about. So if we don't take the right considerations, a few people are able to stop the process, and that's what democracy is all about. So we want to avoid this. Can we afford it? No. This is maybe one of the last strongholds of democracy in the world, I don't know. But we really, really need to consider this and do it in the right way. And this is one of the consequences. I have two jobs. So I work as a professor at Aalborg University and also at Ruralis. We have two offices, one in Trondheim and a small office in Oslo where I hang out. And last year I came by these people here that were protesting against the Fosen wind turbine park. I don't know if you heard about it, but very, very centralized concession procedure. At the end of the day, they forgot all about the Sami rights and probably also about the local rights. But the Sami had, procedural power, so they brought it to the High Court, and they got right. So the High Court said, no, you did it all wrong. The wind turbines are still there, so how that's going to be solved, I don't know. What's also interesting is that these people were offered, it's like 6 families there living in the Åfjord municipality, having rights to they don't own it. That's one of the problems. They don't own it, but they have rights to it. They were offered 90 million Norwegian crowns. They rejected it. Why? Well, they said, we are Sami. This is our culture. If our reindeer can't grass, we're not Sami anymore. So money is not really what's all about. And we have a tendency to forget that. So the way forward, well, so when we look at cases, when it succeeds, it looks like something like this. We really need to move from a more market view of the transition. It can't stand alone. We need to be more involve the public at an earlier point. You also need who to talk to, and that's where planning comes into perspective. If part of our planning is to prioritize areas, we also know who lives there, and then we can go talk to them. So this open planning where we say, well, we don't know where, we want to talk to you about it, that's not the success. The success is to find out what we want to do and where, and then start to talk to people how we want to do it. So we need to start at the social context. What's important for people living there? And then we need to empower them. So be able to talk to these developers that comes in and want to develop this. That's their business. And they don't like it either if they have protests, because it's expensive, it takes longer, and they get a bad repetition. So by empowering the local communities, helping them organizing, the municipalities can do that. And they can also empower them to do the rest themselves and negotiate with the private actors. And we see that happens. But it's really up to the municipalities to make it happen. So that's one of the keys. So let's see, has it succeeded? Well, here's just 2 cases from Denmark and Norway. So the first one here, up to your left, is a district heating plant in Denmark. It's fueled by these solar cells and 3 huge wind turbines at the beach. If there's something you can't build at the beach in Denmark, it's nothing. It's simply legal. They succeeded here because it was considered important infrastructure. It's also considered okay from the citizens because they own it. At the end of the day, it fuels the district heating. So the Sande municipality, what I call a positive energy district, because they get all the heat from renewables, and what they can't use themselves to sell on the grid. We have something like it in Norway. This is a small hydropower. They're owned by local farmers who have rights to the falls. So it's a very welcome extra income for farming in Norway. Farmers are the only ones that are decreasing income in Norway. Everybody else is just getting richer. Norway is filthy rich from the oil, but they consider themselves as a farming country. So this is one of the solutions, and it seems to be a good solution. They talk about it goes under the radar because you don't see it as you do with wind turbines. Well, it does until it doesn't anymore. So they also have to consider this, even though it looks okay. So let's just look at the numbers for a moment. So CO2, as we heard yesterday, emissions still going up, but not everywhere. So I had a PhD student who looked into this. By the way, he was from Estonia, now in this forum. I think that's interesting. 2 municipalities in Denmark could also have chosen some in Norway, but the context is so important, so it will take a long time to explain why. So we'll just start here with these 2 municipalities in Denmark, which is Ringkøbing-Skjern at the west coast and Sønderborg at the very south. Boring, Germany. So if you look here to the left, you will see how both the cities succeeded in decreasing rather significant in their CO2 emission. So over 10 years, both cities reduced CO2 by 70%. I think that's quite significant. So at these 2 municipalities, it's really minus 40%. But they did it in very, very different ways, and that's what you see on the other side. Because they, in Ringkøbing-Skjern, they put up wind turbines. The wind blows, and they have space for it. And has a good industrial history. That's where Vestas all started. So that was their solution to it. In Ringkøbing-Skjern, they hardly set it up in any wind turbines or anything else, but they decoupled using district heating. So efficiency was the key here. This is where Danfoss is living, and Danfoss is specialists, and their business is efficiency in energy efficiency. Right. So, point here is that we can learn, and we can also learn across the Nordics. We do it differently, and this is what's interesting. So we need to look at these differences and then start learning from each other. And the municipalities do it differently. And some do it good and some do it bad. And this is also what we need to learn. And here, just my last picture here is how does democracy comes into picture? Normally we talk about these three pillars. We talk about their personal freedom and private self-determination, and this is, for example, the Sami is a good proxy of. If they're not allowed to do, the cultural heritage and what they are, we violate that. They are also a group, and this is also what the community is all about. Is I want to be part of this community, so I also need a vote and a say, and I need to be allowed to do that. That's a responsibility both from the municipality as a political unit closest to that area, and the industry that wants to do a good business and come out of this shining green. And the final one here is that this all built on a good argument. So, and that's where the dialogue comes into the point. So are we able to talk to the right people at the right time and not too late? We will still see resistance, of course we will. But that's not the same as we should not talk to people. Some will never agree with us, we know that. But if the majority do, and this is more than 50%, of course, do, and if they do get compensated somehow, not necessarily economically, they will probably say, this seems to be okay. I heard the arguments, they heard my arguments, and we balance it out. I believe that will be okay for my part. I have to move. Okay, I see the need. I don't have to move because we did not do as we planned to do in the beginning. No, we amended it so I can live with it now. And that also allows for ownership. And that's one of the keys, that's ownership. But you don't want to own something you dislike from the beginning. So therefore, it's important to do this early involvement in the right way. So with much more ado, I will just end with the conclusion here that there are democratic tools out there, and that's actually the ones here in the middle, in the triangle. Lots of tools that will address these three democratic positions. So it's not that we don't know what to do, but we have to ask experts to help us. And that's one of the problems. The municipalities have to invest in this. They need to have experts to help them. So the politicians are experts in politics, not necessarily technical issues and social issues. So hire them. Build competences in the municipality. I hope that's what you're doing, Luleå. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristian. We're so environmentally sustainable, so we actually even share the same glass of water. Isn't that beautiful?
Oh!
Kristian, this is so relevant to the work that we're doing, and when we need to move further, faster, we need to move together, and you give us some tremendous insights on how to do that. But some of the local examples are often also quite small, and we need to go big, and Luleå shows that. How do you combine the local ownership that you point out the need for with going big?
Well, I don't see the difference, really. I don't see that as... Let me give you an example, again from Denmark and from Ringkøbing-Skjern. So it started out with 3 wind turbines, and the planner in municipalities, she's a landscape architect. She looked at it and said, that's a shame, because this landscape can take more. So rather than have 3 wind turbines here, 2 there, 6 there, why not concentrate it here? And she calculated, well, we can have up to 22 wind turbines here. And she went back to the locals and said, why don't you, and this is the landowners, why don't you get together? And we will support you in that. And they did. So now it's 22 wind turbines and about, I think, 50, 60 hectares solar cell plants that's local driven, local owned. Very few protests. They did it all themselves. But it starts with the municipality and a smart planner who has a director behind her and a whole board of the municipality behind her. So she is empowered to go out and talk to the locals, to empower them to do it themselves. So the 3 wind turbines grow to 22 wind turbines on a solar farm, local owned. And of course, the owners, the landowners who gets most out of it, live in the rural areas. There's only one shop in the area.
Right.
And they still want to go there and meet the neighbors with a smile and not be thrown out. So they also had to involve the neighbors. So they also get a deal out of it.
I love those very concrete examples, and of course several of them can be found in your research. Sometimes I feel that both the sort of pro-sustainability movement and also the counter the not in my backyard movement are increasingly not local, but are on social media, or they're groups of interests online. How much of what you're telling us here is applicable also to that kind of movement?
Oh, we looked into that. So we mapped 73 Facebook pages in Denmark that was origin from local projects that they seem to be injustice. And it simply just grows, because when it escapes to the social media, it's out of control. So the point here is to contain it. How do you contain it? Well, you talk to the locals, and where the locals can go and talk is you as a municipality or the developer, and there's a place to go. If they don't have a place to go, these other sites start to evolve. And we also see they don't come from outside, they are all local. So they grow up from a local because you don't deal with it. So we call this overflow. So if you don't feel heard, and you feel heard, then where do you go? If there's no answer, if you ask the municipality or ask the developer, you open your own Facebook page. It takes 2 minutes. And then it's out of control, and you have all these bubble echo chambers and all that. And there's really nothing to do about it. So that's why you need to involve people early. That's why you need to control not the information, but the communication. And you have to direct it to the people it concerns, not the whole municipality, because we all have other things to do. We don't spend time in looking at municipality plans and all that, but we are asked when something addresses our daily life, then we respond. And this is what we need to do before everything is on the paper.
Thank you so much for all these insights, Kristian.